I'm glad to see everyone. I don't know if it's bright and early. It's early enough, right? On this Thursday morning for our fourth annual Early Career Faculty Development Workshop. We are delighted to see you all. I'm Sheria Robinson-Lane, faculty over in the School of Nursing, and I study adaptation to chronic disease amongst older adults and health disparities over in the School of Nursing. And I'm happy to be your co-host this morning with Lindsey Herrel. Um, we would like to before we get started, just welcome the our IHPI director, John Ayanian, to just give a few words, and then we'll go over our agenda for the day and talk to you about what we have in store.
Thank you, Sheria. Thank you to you and Lindsey for hosting today's workshop, and to Jody Moore for helping to organize it. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody. Looking at the title slide, I couldn't think of a more timely topic for a workshop, given now that we're 10 months into the pandemic and the life of remote work and hybrid work, and we have months more of it ahead of us as we wait for more and more of us to get vaccinated and hope to return to a work that bears some resemblance to the past, but will be different in many ways, I think, even as we start to return to working more in our offices and clinics and teaching. So it's a pleasure to welcome everyone this morning. Something that I'm very impressed with is how we as an IHPI community have been able to maintain our momentum over this very difficult past year that we and everyone else in the broader community is living through. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to come together for today's event, because I think sort of taking a pause to think about how we focus on true north and what our goals are in the near term and the long term is very important to all of our development and whatever stage of career we're in. So I think it's great that you're coming together to do that this morning. And I'd also like to invite you all after today's workshop to return on March 2nd at 2 p.m. when we'll have our annual member forum. I'll be giving an update on the Institute there. We'll have a panel discussion talking about how we've all weathered and tried to thrive over the past year, as you'll be discussing this morning. We'll have our annual Impact Accelerator Awards and our Service Awards. So some of you may have attended those annual member forums in the past. If you're new to IHPI, it's a great way to see a broader cross-section of the community and learn more about what's going on. And I wish you all the best for the workshop this morning, and I'll be joining along, as including one of the breakout sessions coming up later.
Thank you very much for that. And also, I'd like to invite our co-host, Lindsey, if you want to introduce yourself briefly.
All right, just getting unmuted. So I'm Lindsey Herrel. I am a faculty member in the Department of Urology, and my research focuses on the intersection of vulnerable populations and health policies that impact them, and particularly those patients with cancer. So I'm glad to see everyone today, and I hope that this is a useful and building session for everyone.
Thank you. And so we've all worked really hard along with Jody and Stacy and the rest of the team to put together a great program for you guys. So the way that our agenda will work, if you want to go to the next slide, is that we are going to start off the day with a fantastic panel discussion to get some great tips on what it's been like to, not what it's been like, I think we can all relate to what it's been like, but some ideas about how to perhaps improve this working from home journey that we're all on, and some of the things that have went really better for some folks to help them along in this journey. We'll have a little bit of a bio break to check emails and check on the kids and pets around 10:20. So you can plan that in. And then we want you to make sure you don't disappear and ghost us, because at 10:30, we're going to come back for a networking session where we'll have the opportunity to meet perhaps some old friends or make some new ones within IHPI. And then we're going to round out our day with a fantastic keynote from Tony Tsai. And then at the end, we hope that you guys will complete your evaluation so that we can plan for another fantastic program next year. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker, our panel discussion, which is going to be led by Dr. Tammy Chang. And before we, if you want to go to the next slide quickly, as we get ready for this panel discussion, the goals that we want to make sure that you guys are thinking about as we talk about how to survive and thrive from working from home is we really want you guys to be able to get some skills that help to you to strategize how to more successfully work from home. We want you to be able to prioritize your self-care and really think about some realistic goals on how to finish this year strong. I know that the year wasn't what anybody was really expecting, and it's gone on a lot longer than we thought that it would. So we're hoping that you pull a lot from today. And so Dr. Tammy Chang is a health services researcher. If you want to go, I think, back a slide. She is also a practicing physician with a passion for adolescent health and particularly breaking the cycle of poverty and poor health among adolescent mothers and their children. She has a fantastic NIH-sponsored program of research that's focused on improving access to reproductive health care and promoting health pregnancy weight gain among at-risk adolescents using social media and text messaging and also natural language processing. She's the founding director of My Voice, a national text message poll of youth ages 14 to 24 that uses mixed methods and natural language processing with the goal of informing local and national policies in real time. She's also the current director, one of the co-directors of our National Clinical Scholars Program here at the University of Michigan, where she trains junior faculty clinicians in health services research and also teaches a master's level course in both leadership and communication. So we are absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Chang with us this morning to lead our panel. And I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I feel so excited to be here. I'm surrounded by friends and old and hopefully some new friends. We have a fantastic panel this morning. I myself know I'm going to be learning a lot and feeling the fellowship of being around colleagues. I know that's something that many of you had put in as one of the questions you had for our panelists. And so without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our panelists, and I don't know if someone can help me to bring them on the screen. Perfect. So I'm going to start with Charlene Wong. Charlene Wong, one of my favorite people in the world, is an associate professor of pediatrics and public policy at Duke, helps lead the North Carolina's COVID-19 response at the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. She's also the executive director of the North Carolina Integrated Care for Kids, an innovative model serving Medicaid-insured children in Central North Carolina, and is a faculty member in the Duke Margolis Center of Health Policy, the Duke Children's Health and Discovery Initiative, and the Duke Clinical Research Institute. So we're very excited to have Charlene here. I'm going to move on to Matt Davis. Dr. Davis is a health services researcher who has additional training in data science, is an associate professor in the University of Michigan School of Nursing and the medical school. He splits time evenly between teaching and research and teaches a large introductory statistics course and graduate course on data analysis. He's a PI of an R1 grant and a lead on 2 center grants. And finally, Erica Newman. Dr. Erica Newman is a tenured associate professor of surgery in the section of pediatric surgery and surgical director of the M.H.A solid tumor oncology program at the University of Michigan Medical School. Excuse me. Dr. Newman maintains a busy clinical practice in pediatric surgery and has broad expertise in the care of children with pediatric solid tumors. She's an expert and national leader in the care of children with neuroblastoma and is the founder and surgical director of the M.H.A solid tumor oncology program. Dr. Newman is committed to innovative new strategies for faculty and trainee excellence and advancement in clinical care, research, education, and strategizing organizational change that allows all individuals an equal and inclusive opportunity to achieve excellence. So my favorite thing about Dr. Newman is that a few years ago, Glamour magazine contacted our communications department and said, who should we highlight at the University of Michigan, the most glamorous 40 under 40? And Erica Newman came on everybody's list because this email went out, I was like, who would you think? Who would you think of? Well, Erica Newman, you received very, very many votes because you are so glamorous. And so we are so excited to have all of you here. I would love to, if you don't mind, our panelists just to jump in and answer some of the questions that our attendees had for you. And although I may direct them to you specifically, please, other panelists, jump in. And I would love this for this to be a discussion. So Matt, if I could start with you. One of our attendees asked for any tips for scheduling, allotting time for family, self versus work, and how to reasonably lower expectations while still having time for work engagement.
Sure. Well, thanks for that introduction. It's good to be here. I sort of feel the need, like, in the context of this discussion, to kind of give you a little more of the context in terms of like where I'm at, like in terms of my like social structure and what I'm dealing with. So I like all of you have been locked in my house since this thing started. My partner is a teacher at the School of Ed, so she's teaching simultaneously. I'm teaching, and we have two children. We have a middle school. One of my sons in middle school, the other one's in high school. So I'm in a slightly different situation than many of you, I'm sure. And the people that I'm particularly sensitive to are people that are, either completely isolated, living, on their own without roommates or without family. That's a different situation. And people with young kids, younger than 5 years old, which are in completely different, context. So with that being said, I've been sort of teaching online a lot this last term, and I'm leading some different research projects of my own and trying to juggle that. So just keep that in mind. And also, as a disclaimer, I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm trying to figure this out. Have been experimenting along the way. And I guess I'm just kind of here to kind of offer some things that I've been playing with. And any of you, I'm sure, could teach me things about how to better manage this stuff in general. So in terms of that first question about sort of time management and something, I have put a little thought into it. Actually, just preparing for this panel has given me the opportunity to think it through a little bit. One of the things that I feel like that's become sort of interesting to me during this time is how much I've sort of changed how sensitive I am to human needs, and how I'm a lot more sensitive with how I'm feeling from day to day, and trying to sort of work in the context of my emotional status for that period of time. So I try to, when I think about scheduling and sort of that blurry line between working, home life, and play, I try to become very aware of when I'm at my best mentally. I know that, some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people or evening people. And I try to be strategic with the time that I really block for hard stuff. I mean, writing, coming up with new ideas, editing, that kind of stuff. And I'm a morning person, so I tend to put those in the morning. So I try to work within the context of when I'm my best. And I try to keep for, things that are more day to day, those quick emails, keeping up with this and that, to times when I'm not necessarily at my best. And when it starts to blur a little bit into that afternoon, when things start happening, the kids start coming about more, they emerge from their Zoom meetings and what have you. Let's see here. I would kind of, I try not to ever schedule difficult things when I'm not at my best. I am always trying to be a little wary of sort of the transition from work to play or work to home. And I try to demarcate that with some activity more specifically. So I don't, so my work and home life doesn't creep more and more into my protected work time. And for me, that demarcation is activity, physical activity. And that's the way I've been sort of surviving mentally through all this. So I try to have a hard stop when I go for a run, walk, or whatever, to mark that transition more cleanly. Because if you don't, it can kind of creep earlier and earlier. You can find yourself kind of letting go of your work at earlier time points. And the last thing too that I just want to kind of mention as part of this, in terms of this idea of sort of like of understanding how you're feeling day to day. you know, I read once that it was sort of like we're all going through different stages of grieving. And that kind of made sense to me. I mean, it's not the same magnitude of grieving, you know, a loss, you know, a more significant loss, but we are grieving to some degree, you know, the loss of our prior life. And our, you know, part of that prior life is who we used to be. You know, I used to be the person that brought coffee to meetings. I'm not that person anymore. And they're absolutely, I just want to acknowledge sort of the personal part of this is like, I've had moments throughout this that I felt extreme like loss, and afternoons where I was just mentally done. I mean, it was one time I went to Target and I almost like broke down in tears because it was like, what is going on with the world? And I gave myself that afternoon to process, and I was better for it by kind of getting through that kind of mental stage, to free up more mental space for the next day instead of trying to carry it with me. So I've probably talked too long, and I'll pass it back to Tammy.
No, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Matt. Charlene, Erica, do you have anything else to add about how to balance just scheduling and making sure that you have time for their work?
Yeah, the thing I'm thinking about now, I mean, I would say at least in the last month, since it seems that this pandemic is, we can see the light, but we're not quite there. We just have to give ourselves a lot of grace, and it's the work is ongoing. We have deadlines that are still there, but I think just finding some grace in that, if we're home and we can spend time with our families, we can exercise, eat well, we're healthy. I don't know. I've just been in this space of if if the work is piling up, I'm just gonna have some grace with myself and the people around me, because I think we're gonna look back on this and say, how in the world did we get through that? So, I mean, I know we're all just anxious to get work done and be successful and want to figure it all out and how to maintain our work-life balance, but just take some time, have some grace. Um, you know, it's tough in the middle of the winter too, and like it's the summer, at least we could go for walks and be outside and be in the sunshine, but we're in the middle of winter and the snow. And so I would just say, balance it by giving yourself some grace.
Eric, I totally agree. And first of all, I just have to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. I see some friends I have not seen in a long time, Tammy being one of them, but then I like Nora and Michelle. Anyways, this is so, I think I know we're going to get, and Lindsey, folks from like many stages back in my medical training. And I know one of the questions is going to be around like how important the staying connected with your network is. And so this for me, honestly, is like feeding my soul right now to like see you all on the screen. I think like Matt, maybe I can give a little bit of just context for sort of where we're at and thinking about how to create better balance, whatever balance actually means. So I right now am working on paper 70% of my time functioning essentially as the chief health officer for our department and our COVID response. And there's like a lot of really urgent things that are happening in that, and vaccine rollout. And so my workload has grown exponentially since the pandemic started and I took this role on. I have 2 kids who are younger. So I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. My 6-year-old is in kindergarten, has never been to kindergarten. And I will add, for extra fun today, we are in North Carolina. It snowed not even half an inch. Our children are not in school. And guess what they gave us today? A snow day when they canceled remote school. I'm like, ah. So anyways, and on top of that, because our children are so young and our school we have not opened ever, it is pretty much written that we are not going to open this academic year at all, which breaks my heart because my daughter is in kindergarten and is like not going to actually experience a kindergarten. And I have a 4-year-old who's supposed to be in pre-K. We have we created a little quarantine pod, like a little learning pod with one other family who has 2 kids around the same age. And we host it outside these doors right here every day. So my living room looks like a preschool. And there's singing and dancing and all sorts of things. And so I would say two things to add to what have already been said is when trying to strike that balance, I've done a lot of work to really figure out what's truly important and what's truly important like right now. And so for me, some of the work that I'm doing at the state is like extremely urgent, and I stay up late, and sometimes I like miss dinner with the kids because it is like a fire drill that like needs to be taken care of like at this moment right now. And then I've given myself, I think, Erica, like you said, the grace. I've had some papers that are on my table that have been on my table a long time. And I've told some of my staff, I'm like, you know what? We might let that one die. Like, and I've never said that before. I have never let a paper die ever in my like, you know, short career that I've had. I've never let a paper die. Some of the papers, they're going to die. And I'm like, and I came to like peace with that. And like, that's fine. I think the second thing I would say for balance, particularly for those of you who have partners and children and sharing that responsibility, what my husband and I have noticed is what makes it feel much better is for us to just communicate very clearly about when one of us needs to be working in a time that we're normally not working, so that it's not like I'm trying to sneak off away on like the weekends or the evenings to like get some things in. And instead we are just very clear with each other. Okay, hey, and my husband is also a physician. He's a surgeon. He actually knows Lindsey. You know, like, I'm like, I've got a case. It's going to go really late tonight. Saturday morning, I need some time to like get my notes done. I'm like, I'm panicking on the inside. I'm so behind on so many things. Like, I need this block of time. Can you take the kids and do something awesome? And then I'll take them in the afternoon and do something awesome. So I think that sort of like very clear communication, particularly when it comes to childcare for us, has been really important.
That's really fantastic. I think this message of self-compassion really rings true for a lot of people. It's hard, and I think it's really hard to do because we're really used to being compassionate to others. And this idea of saying, I'm going to be equally kind and compassionate to myself, you know, having grace towards ourselves is really hard. And I think it's so nice to hear from other people that you have permission to do that. And, you know, sometimes the tasks are really important and you give yourself self-compassion, and sometimes maybe they're not, you know, critical tasks, but you should still give yourself compassion. So thank you so much for those insights. I wonder if, Erica, I could ask you, one of the participants was talking about maintaining productivity and decreasing burden of meetings. Could you touch on that first?
Yeah, that's, you know, I was thinking about that this morning actually, because I don't know, maybe with Zoom, we are having so many more meetings. And I think it's just because it's easy to pop on a meeting and everybody's home, so people are not traveling. And I think, you know, that, I don't know, I'm sure someone will study this, but I'm sure there's some kind of correlation with burnout and meetings with Zoom, along with, you know, being able to maintain our duties on our electronic medical records. So one thing that I've worked with my assistant to do, and I think it's driving her a little crazy, but it's worked for January. We're like, let's start this on the new year, January 1st, is that a couple things. One is that I started having meetings, requesting that we do 30 minutes. And so, you know, what is it that we can't do with some pre-work by email and some pre-work after that we can't solidify in 30 minutes? So trying to figure out which meetings can really only be 30 minutes. And then making sure that we have breaks between. So not like, you know, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 7, you know, so because all the way until before the holidays, some of us were doing 8 hours in a row with literally clicking from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. And so when that's happening, we're losing creative time, right? We need time to think and to read and write and be creative during our academic days and times. And so I found that my time for that was being completely filled with Zoom. Now, a lot of that is self-inflicted, right? Because I'm on a bunch of stuff and do a bunch of things. But, you know, how do I do all the things I want to do, but still have some time for creativity. And so we cut the meetings to 30 minutes. We made sure that we have breaks in between. So at least 45 minutes, more preferably an hour. And then I went through my calendar from January to June, because our call schedule comes out about 6 months ahead of time. And I started blocking time. And I said, like, and it shocked everybody, because they're like, wait, what? You're not in the OR on this Thursday, and you're not in clinic, and you're not on call. Why is this blocked? And so I started blocking it. And what that allowed me to do was, I still could put meetings in there, but it wasn't this like free for all that, we could just pile on. And so I tried to compartmentalize the meetings to Tuesdays and like Thursday morning. And then the other times I totally blocked it, even though I'd be sitting here at my computer, but it gave me time to be creative. I hope I've only been doing this for a month. So check in with me in about 6 months and see how your girl's doing, because I don't know. But, I feel like it's allowing me to be more, have that creative time, check in on a mentee. My best friend's birthday was yesterday. I managed to send her a little e-gift. It's having that time where I don't feel so frazzled and thin. So, and turns out, like, you could actually block time on your calendar when I know everybody's at different stages in their career here, but, you can actually block time to say, I'm going to take these 4 hours to write. I'm going to take these 4 hours to be creative around my specific aims page. I'm going to take these 4. And so maybe people have already learned that skill. I'm 10 years in and I hadn't. And so I think that if I would have learned how to do this 7, 8 years ago, I think I would maybe have been, more productive. So I think just being protective of your time, you have the right to do it. You don't have to fill up your calendar with meetings. There's nothing, we carry people that need emergent things to discuss, carry a pager, and they page you if something needs to be, 24 hours now, we need to do it. And I've learned that, nope, we can push that meeting out 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, in order for us to have a more, controlled time and protect time for creativity and writing. And, that's to me real wellness. There's so much talk about wellness, and to me, that's really taking control of our own wellness. I don't know. What do you all think? Charlene and Matt, what are your tricks to preserving time to be productive and creative?
Honestly, so I try to block time. I happen to be in the position now where I actually have 2 calendars that are not allowed to sync with each other, which makes it very challenging between my state role and academic role. But what I have found, because I'm so like glued to my email, I really try to make time where I am taking walking meetings so that I can like be more focused. And especially if it's a meeting where we're really trying to like brainstorm or problem solve, I actually find it's better for me both to be like physically moving and like can't look at my email at the same time. Because that's the other thing for me that has driven me, I think, it is not wellness promoting when I'm actually I'm too often now on 2 calls at the same time, like 1 in each ear, which is horrible. It's like a horrible thing to do. But Erica, like you said, there's just so many meetings right now. And then the second thing is for me to carve out time from both work and childcare, exercise, that's like the way that I get to that. And if that's like going for a run or a walk, or like we're lucky to have some exercise equipment in our own house, like that's a time. And it was before the pandemic, that was often when I would swim, is when I would get like my creative ideas, because it's just like away. And so I'm trying to maintain that now as a way to like block time out to be creative. Not that I'm necessarily being like writing productive, but that creative piece, which is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I think I'm seeing a theme emerge here on blocking time. I do the exact same thing. I block an entire day. I mean, I have the luxury to do that because I'm not, doing patient care or anything like that. And it really is protected time. You got to be careful that it is protected both from the people that you might be living with. So we have a policy at my house that the door is closed. Like, don't, kids, don't bother me unless you really have to, to really, and also, I maybe this is obvious, but turn your email off, turn your phone away. I mean, if you're living with your family, those are the people that know how to get hold of you anyway, if you really need to, get in touch with. But that protected blocking of time is just critical, I think. But you got to be careful with yourself, and then the dishes can wait. A lot of researchers are perfectionists, and sometimes that spills over into like wanting to keep your house in great shape and to pick things up. And I think having also a safe space in your house, I mean, whether it's a bedroom or maybe you have an office, that's just like so helpful.
Yeah, I think that this idea that, the genius, the brilliance, the creativity comes when you have a clear mind. And how do we get to that clear mind, I think takes work. And we have sometimes this guilt when we're like, oh, but we're not, I'm not doing something right now. But, how can we get to those brilliant ideas that are going to really make a difference is when there's not those other things that are filling up our entire brain space. And so giving ourselves time and setting ourselves for success there, I think really pays dividends. And so, Erica, I bet that in a few months when we talk to you, you're going to be like, this was the best idea. And so I'm so glad that you shared it with us, because I think, again, we just need permission to be like, oh, we cannot take meetings. Does that make me a bad person if I have to say, no, it's got to be next week or next week or next week? No, I think that what that means is that, you're creating a scenario, an opportunity for you to be the best that you can be at your job. And honestly, that's what society needs right now, is for each of us to be at our best, not for us. As one of my mentees said the other day at our meeting, which I love, was he doesn't want to leave fellowship with a Zoom University degree, right? Zoom University is basically what he's invested his time, it seems like, instead of, a master's in health and health services research. So thank you for those wonderful tips and thoughts. So I'd really love to ask you, Matt, about how you get writing done.
So I saw this question, and one of my co-authors is on the line today, so I had to really make sure my manuscript was done early started yesterday. So I've been thinking about this question, and some of these things are probably things that we all know, but maybe it doesn't hurt to remind ourselves about, and some of them are a little more specific. So my thoughts on this. I always think it's interesting how we talk about writing as a single process. And there are people that do different ways, but I'll just kind of share some of what kind of works for me. To me, it's a couple different tasks. It's one of the most dynamic things that we do. And I kind of partition it into sort of two processes: the process of reading, designing what you want to say, sketching. I mean, if we were in middle school, we'd make an outline. I mean, I think a lot of us don't do that, but we're kind of making an outline in our head about how we're going to actually say what we want to say in our manuscript or whatever. So that's a hard process. Once that's done well, putting like it down in words, I mean, it's not like we're doing like creative writing or anything. It's actually, like, for me, like pretty easy to like plow through sentences once I know what I want to say, once I have a handle on the literature. So that's the partition for me between those two tasks. And those are two very different mindsets for me. I'm not the kind of person that can write an hour per day. Like, that doesn't work for me. I have to immerse myself in something for a couple of days, bite into it, and produce and put it behind me. So it sounds kind of weird, but like, again, back to like blocking time, really important. But for me, when I'm in that creative headspace and I'm reading and thinking and jotting down the logic of what I want to lay out and the pitch for my article, I actually go to a different place in the house. I go to a more inspiring place. I go to a couch, with a nicer view and away from my computer. And I tend to do it with paper and notes and Post-it notes. And I kind of map through all my stuff and get my design ready. And then shortly thereafter, I block a different time segment to actually crank through and put the sentences down. And that usually is like, I don't have to be as much on my game because I already have my game plan, so to speak, in action. So the interesting thing too about writing, and let's talk about writing and the different forms, that there's producing new text. And that's harder during a pandemic and during incredible political divisiveness in the country, because there's so many cognitive distractions between starting something new versus editing someone else's manuscript, and or revising something that's already under review. it's way harder to start a new manuscript with a blank page right now because there's so many cognitive distractions. One thing I started doing, because I was thinking back, like, how can I motivate myself? And one of the things that my partner and I used to love when we were college students together was back when there used to be bookstores, we used to go to bookstores and like get a cup of coffee and work next to each other. And so we started doing that again for some of these creative activities, and it didn't feel so alone. I mean, I had the luxury to be living with someone else. We'd sit next to each other, put our noise canceling headsets on, and on the couch in an inspiring, nice view. And it's just more fun to not feel like you're alone in an office all the time for that kind of process. So just a couple, I'm trying to be as practical as I can, just a couple things to maybe try if you have similar, kind of barriers that I do. But I do, I guess, fundamentally really try to separate the mindset of those two different parts of the writing component.
Charlene, Erica, any thoughts about how to get writing done?
Mine is not a very good approach right now, Matt. I was taking some notes from what you were saying. I do a lot of writing at night because it's the only time to get it done. And often it's like too late and I'm sacrificing sleep to get it done, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm trying to do it in some of this time that I've blocked, but my most productive is super early in the morning, which is not, usually, that's not that healthy either. But I love, like the 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., 4 to 7 a.m., just waking up, coffee on, earbuds in, writing, before I then shower and go to work. And so that's usually my most productive time. At night, I'm usually too tired, so I don't know. I think writing is such a personal thing, a personal space, where you just have to figure out, you got to try a bunch of things and figure out what's best. Like I could never come home and write at night at 8 or 9 o'clock because it's never worked. I'm too sleepy. I want to I don't know, I'm nosy with my kids, So, but then the morning, and I know people that was like, oh my God, I can never write at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's ridiculous. So you just have to kind of try a bunch of things, and whatever your sweet spot is, make that happen. So I know I can, if I need to finish out something, I know that 4 to 7 hour is really, I can count on me for that. So that's, I think, the most important thing, because then, you don't waste a lot of, I don't even try anymore to do stuff at night unless it's just like email or reviewing something really quick. But if I need to like blank paper, try and crank out an abstract or, finish out a grant, that's that sacred time. So I think it's just about finding that sacred time that you're most likely to be successful. And which will be, I bet if we can all go around, it probably be different, for all of us. But the key is just finding out, doing the work to find out what that is, and then doing it consistently.
Thank you. I think that's great to have insight into yourself and what you need to get there. And so I will give you a contrasting view. It sounds like everybody here, Matt, Charlene, Erica is talking about being in a quiet space. For me, I'll tell you, I break it down where it's like, I know I need to write something. I know I need to write something. I can't even get myself to like flip open the laptop. So I'll say to myself, all right, I'm gonna do this thing, but first I'm gonna flip the laptop open. So I'm like one step closer, right? Then I'll do something. Then I'm like, I'm gonna open the file. I can't write right now. I just can't because it's like, I can't write. I will open the file, right? And then later I'll see it open and I'll be like, wait a second, that paragraph. Okay, let me wait, blah, 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 fix that. And then I go wash the dishes. And I'm already thinking, I'm like, man, no, I didn't like that. All right, done washing. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna fix that sentence I didn't like, right? And so there are times when that's the way that my writing works. Or as I'm washing dishes, I'm like, oh, this is the argument. This is the argument. Dry the hands, go type it all out, right? And then I can't look at it again. And so for me, it's there is very little separation. And some people are like, that's not right, that's not good, that's not healthy. But for me, it allows me to have almost like this mosaic of my life. And people who've been in my class, they'll hear me talking about this mosaic where it's like, instead of saying like there's a block of time where I'm going to do work and then a block of time where I'm going to do something else, it's more like all the pieces of my life are coming together in this like beautiful unmatched puzzle that creates this kind of like Monet looking picture at the end of the day. And I'm okay with that, right? Just yesterday, you know, my kids were like, we want to go skiing, we want to go skiing. And I'm like, I got a meeting at noon, da, 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 da. And I'm like, all right, we're on the slopes at 10 a.m. You know, at noon, they're skiing. I'm in the car on Zoom, and it's awesome because my toes are frozen anyways. By 1, I'm back on the slopes. By 5:30, back on a call. So to me, I feel so happy. I was writing in my journal last night. I have this 1-sentence daily journal where I'm like, today was a good day. Got some skiing in, didn't tear my ACL, hung out with the kids, and got my meetings in, you know. And there are days when that works and I'm so happy. And then there's days like today that's not going to work. That's not going to work. But I allow myself to be okay with that, you know. And sometimes people are like, well, Dr. Chang, I wish that you could see my slides. I'm like, I see it, sir. I see your slides right here on my phone. you go right ahead. So that's maybe a contrasting view and something that maybe people can't do all the time, but I'm okay with it. So with that, I would love to ask Charlene, you alluded to this idea about working successfully and some of the things that you've done with your 4- and 6-year-old to have them in virtual school. I would love for you to answer some of our attendees' questions about navigating childcare while getting work done.
Well, first of all, can I just say I'm so jealous that you even have like the option to like decide to go out skiing for a day. We're in North Carolina. We don't have that. Not where I live. So that's one. I think I just also want to add to the writing thing. I have also come to like peace with sometimes I write things that are not my best product, and that's okay. Depending on what it is, and you just go with it, get the words down on paper, and like move on to the next thing. When I edit my mentees' work now, I used to do just like such like very, very thorough edits all the way through, depending on what it is. Like Erica, you mentioned abstracts, like some abstracts for, you know, I'm like, I'm just going to make some comments. That's going to be better than me not reviewing it at all, and sort of being like, okay with that. Okay, so for childcare, we are in the very privileged position to be able to have a lot of help. We have thought very carefully about who we're going to bring into our little bubble of help, because we don't want to have so many people coming in and out with COVID rates being so high. So we have parents, we have some folks that we pay to help watch our children. As I mentioned, to us, one of the most important things we did because of our children's age and like what they're actually supposed to be learning right now around like social emotional health and peer relationships was to create this very small learning pod with one other family who we've known for a long time and we trust. And that has been a huge benefit, because I think especially for younger children and older children, you know, you just hit these like boredom walls when they're like just by themselves. And so for us, that has been a really critical piece, because they're still able to have these social interactions. I will say, as an added bonus, because we are quarantined, we took one vacation together earlier in the year. We're planning, Tammy, to take a ski vacation together. And we feel very comfortable doing that and getting a house together, because our families we are like together, we're just together. I would say the second thing is for specifically the remote learning piece. We did a lot of work on the front end, and we've had to be very flexible, because I'm sure like any of you all who are in remote school, the schools are also working their hardest and trying to adjust, but they change things sometimes, and you feel like you had like something going on and then they change the schedule. So we've really tried to be very organized. We've got like, I mean, we have operated it like we operate like project managing a research project. We have spreadsheets that have the layout of here's our meal schedule for this week, who's doing which meals, here's the schedule for each of the 4 kids because they had different things. We have also identified, and again, recognizing the privilege that we have, to throw in some other things into their day, so that like we're starting this week virtual voice lessons for our 4-year-olds as like something to just like keep them interested, because and also being very cognizant of where they are emotionally. So like yesterday, Tammy wasn't able to go skiing, but there is a museum nearby that you can rent out for an hour and just in your little pod. And we hadn't been doing it because it felt like too much money to do, but we all sensed that our kids were like losing it. They were losing it. They were like not liking school. they were not wanting to learn. And we were like, okay, that's not okay, right? We need to like do something different. And so I would say bringing in help, being very cognizant of where our kids are at and being able to pivot, and then like just staying really organized. And it's really like a very much a team effort on all of those things.
Erica, Matt, any thoughts about childcare, child rearing?
Yeah, I have two kids. So my daughter is 17. She was my residency baby. And then we went totally crazy. And 10 years later, we decided to do it again. And my son is 6. So I tease because, and my grandmother who's 90 lives with me. So we have like all the, it's the circle of life in our home. It's like the, preschool, school age, teenager, middle age, my husband and I, and the elderly. And so I think, so for childcare and the kids staying home, with my grandmother being here, we've been able to do it. My husband, who has a law degree, but we made a decision many years ago when I was a surgery resident that he wasn't gonna, he would mostly have jobs that would allow him to stay home with our kids. And so we've been fortunate that his work has allowed him to be home through COVID. And so he's become now an expert kindergarten teacher for my son, for Grayson, who was kindergarten this year. And, that's been a challenge because he definitely spends a lot of time making sure that the kids are logged on and all the devices are working. And then he's trying to work from home too. So I think that's a really, I always admire health centers that have on-site childcare, and I'm always wondering why we don't or have never had that, like physically in our health system, a place where people that work there can have their kids be there. And there are a couple centers, I don't know if anybody's had experience on the call with health systems that are able to do this successfully, but I always hear rumors that people the health system is thinking about that, but I just think it's a problem that can be solved, and that this issue around childcare could be so it'd be so wonderful and fruitful to be able to have our kids very close, where we could be with them either in the health system or in our research spaces, like in the actual building. So anyway, I don't have a good solution if we don't. I think some are very privileged that have partners that can stay home, but again, that's a very that's a privilege that many don't have. If you have two households that are working, and so in a town like ours, Ann Arbor, there's such high competition for nannies, and so it's really hard for people to find a good nanny because the nannies just bounce from the highest offer and whoever is giving the best. I've heard that people are buying nannies like designer bags, and it's like in cars, and so I mean, residents can't afford that, and junior faculty can't do that, and so it's a real problem.
Erica, I will just add, when we were finding our childcare, and we're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, it was absurd. There were people who were, and I know people, colleagues, other physicians who actually rented apartments, like separate apartments, so they could have like a remote school pod in an apartment, and hiring teachers. And they were actually hiring teachers away from our public school system because they were offering them easily double what they were making in the public school. And it was just the equity, and continues, I think, to be so troublesome.
So I can't really add much about sort of child rearing at the young age of the spectrum, but I am like, wow, I can't imagine having had kids that age in the past. But I can speak just about having kind of older kids, so a middle school and a high schooler. In some ways, I feel like over these last 10 months, like my kids, we've kind of evolved from sort of like the traditional parent-kid relationship. I make the rules, they follow the rules, to like living with like young roommates. And it's also been kind of an enormous opportunity actually to bring them in. We have more like family meetings, and we talk more or less about policies. and kind of explaining things. They've become very sensitive to like the fact that we are teaching from home. They seem to get it more, and they've been able to step up a lot more. I mean, they make their own lunch now. It's kind of incredible. But we've tried to be strategic and kind of bring them into the fold and to have real discussions about risk, and, our family's health, and more of a team mentality. It was kind of a unique opportunity to kind of make them step up a little bit, and kind of starting to think more towards college down the road for the older one, and how to live well with other people, and how to be a good citizen, and how to be a good roommate. So it's just kind of a slightly different thing for, I guess, a little more relevant for older children.
Yeah, I think that we could also spend some time talking about some of these silver linings, because there's definitely some silver linings that we could also focus on, along with the challenges, and maybe somehow in our hearts and minds, see them as redeeming um, redeeming aspects of this time. Because I know for my kids who are in 5th and 7th grade, sometimes they come to me and they're like, I'm so sad that this is happening. And I always remind them, I say to them, do you think that this is going to be the hardest thing you'll ever have to do? It's not, right? It's not going to be the hardest thing. And so, how can we come out of this looking back and saying, wow, I was so grateful for this, this, and this. And that takes effort. It means that we need to be very deliberate about talking about it that way, because it's, I tell them there's nothing we can do about it. So let's look, how are we going to make it the best that we can? And when I say it to them, then I say it to myself, say it to myself and remind myself, to practice that mentality. I'm wondering if I can ask Erica, there is a question about people missing seeing people and the energy that comes from that. And Charlene was saying how excited she was to see friends, and I feel the same way. How do you deal with that? This idea that we aren't physically with people and aren't getting that energy that we might when we are with them to drive us in our lives.
I struggle because I'm such a I'm just such like a touchy-feely person. Like I just love people, I just feed off the energy of my friends and my people, like I'm looking at Leslie Dossett's picture right here in the center of my screen, and I like miss her, right? Because we've spent so much time together, and now it's just like all of a sudden, we barely in the same room. Hey, Leslie, barely in the same room together, and it's been almost a year. And so I do struggle. One thing that we did in pediatric surgery, I have there are 4 women in pediatric surgeons at M.H.A. And so the 4 of us have really grown very close over this last year, because when COVID hit last March, we didn't know, we were so like wanting to be together and missing just being at work and connecting. We started, in the beginning, it was almost every night we would be on FaceTime or Zoom together, just the 4 of us. And then at first it was because we just wanted to know what was going on with COVID and what we were going to do with our patients and how our kids were out of school. And, it was those kinds of issues. But then it just turned to like, let's have wine together, tonight. Let's do a happy hour. Let's cook dinner together. Let's, where are you guys ordering your groceries? And so it became this really even closer sisterhood, because we were able to connect, although virtually, on FaceTime, but we did that really consistently. And I really think that's what got at least me through with, through the spring and summer and even now, and not feeling so disconnected. And so, I mean, it's just so abnormal to not, I can't even imagine what this is going to have on all of our kids, not having this social interaction, but just so abnormal. And so is Spec on the phone? And she's on there. She just sent me a chat. I didn't even realize. Well, you should talk about our sisterhood. I didn't know you were on
It's
here.
the best thing ever.
Right. I didn't know you were on there, sister. But yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
we were, we do our little happy hours. We got together in one of our partners has Erin Perone has a kind of it's kind of closed in her back porch, and they have a heater up there. And so we one day put on our coats and hats and gloves and just sat out there just to be together. But I think you just have to be intentional about it. We have to make each other do it. Like some nights they were like, come on, happy hour. And I'm just like, I don't want to. And then, but they all got on and made me get on. Then I got on, and then it's the best thing ever. So, you just have to make yourself stay connected and not, I mean, I can't imagine people that live alone, like Elizabeth and Megan live alone. And so I was just like, oh my God, they live alone. Like we have to not let them be at home like alone. So anyway, just whatever the motivators are, I think you just have to be intentional about it. Get you a little pod that you can stay connected. Elizabeth, what did I leave out about our little sister happy
No,
hour?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, just having colleagues intentionally offering support and just connection during this time of isolation has really been the best thing.
Charlene, Matt? Talking about staying connected with others.
Yeah, I think, for me, trying to schedule some, when possible, one-on-ones. Sometimes I'm doing them even just like 15-minute, and it's still via Zoom, but at least that way it's not just like in a group setting. In the positions I'm in, I've actually hired several staff members, including some senior staff who I have never met in person still to this day, which feels just totally crazy. And so at least trying to have these one-on-ones with some regularity, because because normally, right, in a meeting, before you actually start the meeting, if you're all sitting in the room, you're just like chatting over here with someone, you're chatting over there with someone. But in these Zoom rooms, you can't do that. So you can't get to like know people, right? Because you're just sort of like, all right, here's our agenda for today. Here's another slide deck to look at. And then I would say the other thing is, I think Erica, sort of similar to what you've done, is like my most senior staff member who I've hired, who I've also only met twice in person. The second time is we decided to go to the zoo with our kids together and like be outside. We were all masked up, and it was like this big deal because we took a picture together with our kids and we showed it in our meeting and like our big team for the CMMI project that I run. And everyone was like, oh my God, that's so crazy. You guys saw each other, but that was like one time, and we've been working together for a year, and she's like my COO essentially. And it is sort of like crazy.
I don't have a whole lot to add, but there's already been some really great comments from both Erica and Charlene. But I really do agree with this idea of having to be intentional. And there is if you think about human interaction in a meeting, a lot of the stuff that we crave is the stuff that happens before and after the meeting that now by nature doesn't seem to happen when you hear the meeting is being recorded, thing, and all of a sudden it's game's on, so you have to build it in. You have to make sure that it happens, and if it it doesn't happen organically, you got to have that period before you start recording or after your meeting where that you can have that natural interaction. I think is just being a little bit more strategic in terms of with your colleagues.
Yes, I was going to throw in, there's this magic of taking the virtual to the real life. And, the examples that we've heard are like going to actual physical places that takes this relationship we have that's virtual and it takes it into real life. And, one of the things that I saw done really well in some of our kids' activities is where the teacher had them choose other kids and then like send things to each other, and then they would open those things virtually. And so it made it seem like, oh my gosh, this is a real person. And so we did that in our group, where we sent each other like little things that we could see might be fun or might bring somebody a smile or could be helpful to them, or a little something that was like small, but it made that virtual that link physical again. And it was fun to do. It was like you were still online shopping, but it was like fun to do. And so I just love this idea of how can we be creative in bringing these virtual relationships that are like everything now into that physical world. So we only have a little bit of time left, and I would love for us to spend some time on Dr. Ainian's question. He poses question, what changes in your work or personal life that you've made in the past 10 months are ones that you'll want to continue after the pandemic subsides? So who would like to take that first?
I'll start with two quick things. I think one, because I love the thinking about the silver linings. And I think one silver lining that we're going to try to keep is we've gotten a lot closer with our neighbors. We happen to live on like a little cul-de-sac, and I mean, we were all friendly before the pandemic, but we've all really like leaned on each other for that like actual in-person connection, even though we're masked and everything. But I think our little crew even this morning, because it's like unusual for it to snow in North Carolina, like we're all texting each other photos of the kids outside. And I think, that's something that we're going to really continue, because we try to do a weekly, like, let's just meet in the cul-de-sac for coffee, like on a Saturday morning, and we're going to like sit around and like talk in person to someone that's like not in our house. So I think that's one thing. And then I think the second thing, that I'm personally going to try to keep, because I work at Duke, as mentioned at the top, but that's like about 30 minutes from where I live commute. And my goal is, even when we're able to go back in person, I had always said I was going to try to find a half day per week when I was going to work from home. And I'm going to find like at least one full day a week, if not two, that I plan to like continue working from home.
I second that. Usually a day like today, when I just had meetings, I would definitely not be home doing it. I'd be in the office. And so, but it's nice to be here. And, if we can do meetings from home, I bet when we go back to being whatever our new normal is going to be, it'll be a hybrid of Zoom and in person. I know we're trying to strategize in surgery how we can still offer Zoom, but still have people that want to be there in person too. So just being, staying home and being, here and doing more with my kids during the day. Like I found, like I had no idea what went on in my house during the day, typically, whether my kids were here or not. And so it's just kind of, at first it was very weird to be here at 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm home. But so just doing that more. And then I think just the closeness and the sisterhood that I've developed with my partners. I mean, those, doing those things, being intentionally connecting with people, I think has been really, that part I hope that will keep going after the pandemic.
So for me, the first thing is like, I feel like what I'm going to carry forward is like, I've never been so aware of my headspace before, and like how I'm doing and assessing myself and my needs as a human, because I've been forced to really understand myself, how much interaction I need and where I'm at in terms of my headspace, in terms of being able to produce work. That's the first thing that I'm going to probably take forward. It's easy to complain a lot about Zoom meetings, but I do anticipate that it'll be more acceptable to choose Zoom or in person. And as much as we're all sick of them now, there's potential there for efficiency, like enormously going forward when we're no longer having to do this, because it's going to be more acceptable to cluster your meetings and to have a hybrid between meeting in person, but happen to be up at NCRC and then dial into a Zoom meeting. It's going to be more acceptable depending on the meeting to actually get stuff done and to really not have to run as much unless you want to. So that's going to be great, I think, long term after the Zoom fatigue has waned. And then last thing, just on a personal note, my kids are definitely going to continue to be cooking more in my house.
I love that. I love that. I feel like if there are new questions, oh, perfect. If there are new questions or other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that we got chickens. And so that is definitely something that we can't get rid of after the pandemic, but we really loved. And I know that I'm not a farmer, although sometimes I feel so proud. My friends think it's a half miracle that we are able to keep these creatures alive. And one of the things that we've been able to do is to not travel as much. And I bet a lot of you have that same scenario where, I was traveling sometimes 2 times a month, and I started to realize that time, I'm doing the same events and talks, and they're on Zoom, but then I can sleep in my own bed, and I don't have to use those, natural, the fuel of the airplane to travel there. I don't have to spend this money to stay places, and it reminds me of how important it is to be intentional about still making those same personal connections. And one of the things I'll say is, in this networking session coming up, a lot of my students or even my colleagues are like, oh my gosh, I had to do this thing. And I say, hey guys, why don't we make this goal where we're going to make one real connection with somebody, just one, during the Zoom thing, and then we'll call it a day. Right. And so I challenge all of you that during this session coming up, when you are network, just one person, one real connector with someone. It's something that we hear people are missing, but sometimes without being pushed or without having like that goal, sometimes we miss those opportunities. So, oh, Nora, thank you for saying my chickens are beautiful. We think so. We think so. And they lay eggs now, which is a crazy, crazy thing. Sometimes you think, obviously, eggs come from chickens, but until they actually come out of your own chickens, you think they come from Costco. So I want to take the second and say, there's a new question about what are some ways that new faculty can build relationships to find collaborators, from Sheria. Can somebody take that one on?
I mean, I think, so we, new faculty, for me, it's been new fellows. I think finding like a mentor who can help you identify some other faculty who you should meet with, and then doing the warm introduction via email, or, if they're having calls with them anyways, to say, hey, we have this new faculty, new fellow, love for them to be able to meet with you, to start making that, and then ending each of those meetings with, who else do you think I should meet? I would say is one suggestion. Oh, and then let me follow. And then once you do that, and identifying who you actually want to build those more, as Tammy was saying, like more meaningful and like longer term relationships with, really doing, as I'm sure Tammy and John and others on this call, the mentorship best practices of asking them to be a mentor, setting up those standing meetings so that you're staying on their calendar, particularly because people are very busy with the Zoom meeting clog on our calendars.
I suppose maybe this goes without saying, but my only thought on this is that, considering this situation, that's got to be hard, to be building relationships in this forum. But you just have to be much more strategic about it and upfront in terms of going after it and kind of having that and making it happen, because it's not going to happen organically.
We had another question about, how do you all cope with saying no to opportunities that could advance your career?
I'm not the right one to answer that one. I'm just now learning how to say no, because I don't really know what, not necessarily advance your career, but I just don't know what's, I find a lot of interest in a lot of different areas. And so sometimes it's hard to tease out what is, somebody once gave me advice, do only things that are the highest, best use of your time. And I sometimes have trouble knowing what that is. And so, and then I think, oh, I could do it. I could, just add this on, one extra committee, one extra project. And so I don't have a good solution for that one. I think one thing that my coach has been helping me work on is that just sticking with my why, and really being clear about my why and my passion, and what my what value that I'm able to bring to things, rather than just taking on every idea that seems like it might be a good one. So I've been working on that, just trying to stay focused on really what's my why, what am I really passionate about, and if the new project or committee or whatever is of question, if it fits in that, then I find a way to make it happen. And then it doesn't feel like work to me, So people go, oh, she's doing so much stuff, but then it doesn't feel like I'm working, hopefully, until if I start dropping balls, which is another clue that you might be doing too much, is if that, you're dropping balls, missing deadlines, everything's late, then, it's time then to recenter to okay, what am I really gonna make an impact, the most impact on for ultimately what our patients, the better of society. And so, yeah, that's a big, I mean, like at Michigan, there's so many people doing so many amazing things. And I'm sitting there looking at all of you guys and I'm like, wow, why I should have been part of IHPI? What happened to me? You know? But yeah, that's a tough one.
Erica, I think my answer is a little bit similar to yours in that I really lean on my mentors here to help me sort of have that external perspective on as new opportunities come up. And I would say one way to get to manage up to my mentors, what I do, and I think I've probably shown Tammy this at some point, but I have like a single PowerPoint slide where I lay out for myself, this is my portfolio of what I'm working on. And I actually bring that to my mentor meetings. And I will just call out one of my mentors who's formerly at Michigan, Peter Ubel, who's like, he's my guru mentor in like life. And probably I used to be more consistent with it before I took on this state role, but I would say once a quarter, my mentor meeting with him would be, I want to show you my updated like one slide that is like what Charlene is working on right now, who I'm working with, how I bucket what I'm working on, get your feedback on that. And it's him, and I have two other senior level mentors who I do this with some sort of regular cadence over the year, so that when Eric, as you said, like someone asks you to do something else or become, as the question was, like a co-PI on this grant, that like at the last minute, you know, I can then go to the mentors and it's not like, let me give you a whole bunch of context and I'm telling you about this new opportunity, but they already know the sort of bigger picture and they've been helping me evolve that over time.
So just to kind of take this a little bit farther in terms of saying no to new opportunities, I would sort of separate, I think, things that so in terms of general mentorship and, you know, keeping yourself on the straight and narrow in terms of doing things that are going to progress your career, you know, in the right direction. That's one thing. That's general mentorship. And yeah, you know, keeping a slide like is a great idea, and kind of making sure that you only say yes to things that are in the trajectory in which you want to go. That's one thing. But if you're saying no to things that are things that you would have otherwise been doing and can't take on because of the limited bandwidth of the pandemic, that's a different category in my mind a little bit. And I think if you know, if you find yourself doing that kind of thing, those are opportunities you might want to come back to, you know. So when you say no to it, you just want to be really clear that you're saying no not because you're not interested. You want to be in that grant, you want to participate when you have more time, but you can't because of the circumstances. And maybe even keep a list in your journal, you know, on a piece of paper, the people that you want to revisit after this whole, you know, once you're getting back to normal and can take on new things, and revisit that and try to re-engage in those things if there are things that you're only saying no to because of the circumstances during the pandemic. So I would kind of separate those two things. Can
someone give me screen sharing? I'll just pulled up the little thing if y'all want to see. It's like no rocket science, y'all. It's like a single PowerPoint slide. Whenever anyone gives me sharing, just let me know. I'll just pop it up on the screen. I'm also happy to send it if
you're a co-host now.
Okay, hold on. And also I think this is what I recommend to my mentees. Also, when the question around like, hey, how do you like meet new faculty? I recommend all my mentees create something that looks like this, that's like you on one page, because for those of us who are potential mentors who like students are reaching out to, it's really helpful to me to be able to see like on a page, okay, this is what Sarah does. And you can see here, like I list who my mentors are, my portfolio, I organize in these buckets. And honestly, every time I'm getting ready to have a meeting where I update this, it forces me to also like zoom up to say like, oh, what am I working on? Oh, it turns out like, actually this bucket is getting super heavy. Do I still really want to be doing more behavioral economics work or not? And I bring this with me when in person. I would bring it like printed out to the meeting, hand it to them, and then follow up with an email that had it attached to the email as well. And that was part of how I personally, like when I moved to Duke a few years ago, that was how I was meeting with new mentors and sort of telling them about me.
That's so fantastic. And you can see people are really big fans, and you're right, it's very straightforward and easy to do. And sometimes it takes that time to step back and see what you're doing to make sure you are on the path that you want to be, that will make you feel fulfilled. Jasmine, one of the things I was thinking about when you were asking about how do you cope with giving up these opportunities, the thing that I think this is an opportunity for you to think about who might be able to take on that opportunity, and then you become almost like a giver in a mentorship role where you can say, hey, this is something I would have loved to do. It's a fantastic opportunity, and I think it would be great for this other person. And all of a sudden, instead of feeling bad about not being able to do it, you give this awesome opportunities to someone else, and they can really help move this project forward. And I don't think that harms your career in any way. If anything, I think that it really shows what kind of leader you are and what kind of person you are to be able to provide opportunities to other people. And what goes around comes around. I mean, the health policy community is so small. The health services community is so small. All of our specialties are so small. So I think don't ever feel like this is going to be the only opportunity. I can say as a fact at the University of Michigan that opportunities are abound. There are never ending numbers of opportunities, and probably at all the universities that are represented or that we collaborate with. And what do people look for when they're looking for collaborators? Are great people, like you. And so don't be worried about that. I think sometimes we, again, don't give ourselves permission to say like, oh, it's okay to say no to this. And when I say no, how do I make this a thing that someone else can say yes to? And, I know that makes me feel really, really good knowing that I'm advancing other people's work and other people's careers. So hopefully that helps. We are down to the last 2 minutes. I wonder if everybody in our panel wants to just give like parting remarks, one takeaway that you have learned from working in a pandemic to thrive, and then we will say goodbye so that you can continue your hopefully awesome day, partly not on Zoom. Maybe we'll start with you, Charlene.
Yeah, I think, for me, the like word of the pandemic, one of the many words, is just to be flexible and to like know that you're gonna have to make sometimes small adjustments and be flexible. And then occasionally, like when the school drops a bomb on you, like we're canceling school today because it's a snow day, even though we're all remote, you make a bigger pivot. And that I feel like at the beginning, they really like rattled me because I was already feeling just like so stressed because everything felt so new. And I feel like now as I've been like, you know what? We're all going to be flexible. It's going to be fine. I think it relates back to the grace, Erica. I think for me, that's been really important to keep my own emotional mental health better so that we can do all the other things that we need to be doing.
Erica, any parting thoughts, takeaways?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This was really, I learned a lot just listening. I think still I'm gonna stick with grace, and hopefully, somebody will use that or need it, at some point today or this week. But just maintaining, grace for ourselves and the people around us that are closest to us. This is, unprecedented times. And so we are still marching through and accomplishing. And, my chair says, our missions are not canceled. And so we're still working towards those. And so, like just giving ourselves and staying in this space of grace, I think has really allowed us, it really has allowed us to be more productive and more creative. And so that, that's kind of where I'm trying to keep my headspace these days.
I guess in terms of kind of wrapping up some of my comments, and thanks so much for having me. I learned a ton just in thinking about this and listening to others. For me, a lot of it has to do around awareness. Like I keep mentioning myself and others. And every single time I ended one of my classes, I would always say, like, be kind to yourself and be kind to others, because you just don't know what people are going through. You can't make any assumptions now. You don't know the things, that people are dealing with. So those are the things I try to keep in mind.
Well, I know on behalf of IHPI and the early career faculty group and all of our participants, thank you all so much for sharing your wonderful personal stories and insights. I also learned a lot. I wish you all well in all the places that you will be going today and in the future. Thank you all, and look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Thank you all so much. That was an amazing panel. Thank you, Tammy, Charlene, Matt, and Erica. Amazing. We are going to go to a break right now. We will come back at 10:30 for the networking session. You'll be in small breakout rooms. So do whatever you need to do. And we look forward to seeing you back at 10:30. Our next session is we are super lucky to have Tony Tsai. He is going to present and facilitate a session. He is the Director of Leadership Development at the University of Utah School of Medicine. He's experienced in guiding faculty, staff, and students towards more meaning and purpose in their careers. Many of us know him from his time here. He was formerly the head of the Career Center at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, and he was here at Michigan Medicine from 2008 to 2015, where he led efforts in lean healthcare and education transformation. As part of IHPI, he was an instructor for the leadership development portion of the Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholars Program, which is now the National Clinicians Scholars Program. We are thrilled to have you, Tony, so I'm not going to take any more time and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. It's really nice to see everybody here again. I mean, I feel like even though I'm just full disclosure, I'm in a cabin in Idaho, right? And so, and so it's really nice. It's almost like virtually nice to be back in Michigan. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, get my little bit set up here, and then we'll get started. All right. Okay, so this being 2021, a new year, we obviously have really good high hopes for it, right? And so how do we kind of make the most out of this year? And so I just want to share some thoughts with you guys about how to make this year a really great year. And I wanted to go back to a couple years ago, and this was back right before the summer in 2018, and I was talking with the kids, and we were like, what are our goals for the summer, right? And usually what happens is, I remember back in 2017, we would say to the kids, kids, we should, now that school's over, we should read more books, right? And the kids are like, oh yes, of course, we should read more books. And of course, then the summer goes by, and then we were like, how many books you read? Like, one. I'm like, oh, that's not that was a fail. And so then in 2018, we're like, no, we're gonna set some goals now. This is not just we're not gonna just kind of like we're gonna take it pretty seriously. So we put up this chart here, right? And where everybody has goals. There's even stuff beyond goals, but we're like, Mom's going to read 8 books. Nate's going to read 15 books. Lincoln's going to read 15 books. Theo's going to read 30. He's youngest, so his books are like pamphlets. So he gets to read 30. And so then we also have another one actually next to, as each kid reads a book, we would actually put a sticky notes, all the books so people can see how many books is read. And so by the end of the summer, what happens is we actually made our goal. Each kid read more than their goal. And so this is a key insight, not just for like 10-year-old kids, right? But for adults like us, right? And so the idea is you got to set goals, because when you set goals, it focuses your attention and you can actually get a lot more things done. So, when people say, I want to be more productive, I'm like, okay, number one thing, you got to set more goals. Okay. And so, of course, sometimes we are a little bit like traumatized by goals because we sometimes set goals and we don't follow through. Then we're just like, oh, I don't want to disappoint myself again. And so we're going to talk about how to not disappoint yourself. Right. But first, we're going to say, look, we got to set goals, because what happens is this quote is like, either you run the day or the day runs you. And so what happens, if you go into the day and you don't really know what's the top priority, bunch of stuff's going to come in and fill it. And so same thing as a week. So if you don't go into a week and sort of knowing what the main things you have to get done are, you're going to end up getting you're going to still be very busy, except you're going to be like, where did this week go? Right? You're going to be like, where did this week go? Where did this month go? Where did this year go? And then eventually you'll be like, where did this life go? Okay. And so therefore what happens, so every day, for example, in the morning, I set my priorities every single day. I wake up and I look at what is the most important thing I have to do. On Sundays, I look at the next week and I say, what is the next thing? What's the key things I have to do for next week? And so on January 1st, I also set goals for the year. And so before you go into any period of time, you actually have to set the goal for that period. That's sort of one of the key things to do. All right. If possible, even daily. All right. It only takes a couple of minutes. And so this idea of setting goals, I talked to a lot of people about careers. So I asked them about, hey, what is your carefully crafted 10-year goal? And I would say most people can't answer this question for me. I would say of the thousands of people I asked, just about 0 people really had this answer, a good answer for this. And so then people say, I still want to do this, but I don't, but if there's no really strong goals attached, it's really not a very good, strong intention. And so I would encourage you guys, like, have a 1-year goal, have a 10-year goal, have like a 1-week goal, and so let the goals drive sort of the things that you do. All right. And so one thing I'll share with you, I view things a lot as that there's a balance in life, right? And so there's a balance in life, in this case, between directedness and allowing. And I'll tell you, I'll sort of explain more what I mean, which is that if you are kind of fuzzy on the inside, life has to provide you a lot of direction from the outside. And so what happens, you think about, like, okay, let's say if, let's say a new resident, like an intern comes in, they're kind of like, they don't really know what's going on. They're so new. They're just like, and so because they're so fuzzy on the inside, they actually require a lot of supervision. It's like, they're like, okay, you got to do this, right? And so therefore, anytime the sort of the inside is unclear, you'll experience a lot of structure and restriction from the outside. Same thing as if you are very directed on the inside. So for example, you can remember, like, maybe a colleague who has a lot of initiative, who kind of get things done ahead of time, who knows what they really want to do. Then you look at yourself, it's like, hey, you know what? I don't have to tell this person. I don't have to micromanage this person, right? And then you will see that as you're more directive on the inside, the outer life will essentially be much more allowing to you. And so you think to yourself, hey, I have a lot of structure. I'm under so many things coming at me. The way to kind of get out of it is to begin to develop stronger intentions. Okay. A lot of people say, I wish I was more free, but then I ask them, like, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I don't really know. Like, okay, well, then I guess, I guess you're going to get a lot of structure imposed upon you, right? Regardless of, even though you say you want to be free, right? Now that I do a lot of stuff with leadership development, so this has got 2 for 1 in that if you're more inner-directed, that automatically comes with leadership. Because think about the people that you want to follow. You're not going to want to follow this wishy-washy, fuzzy person. Okay, that does not engender confidence on the part of other people. So in the end, the more inner direction that you have, you will also see that the more leadership presence that you will develop. All right, and so this goals and all that kind of comes into play relative to this directiveness. I don't know if you guys, for those of you who know me from RWJ, you'll know that I use a lot of quotes. So here's quote number 4, and there'll be a lot more quotes to come. But it says, if you don't build your dreams, somebody will hire you to help build theirs. So this is kind of, you're one of 2 states. You are either working on your things, or essentially you are being paid to work on somebody else's things. And of course, I always like, you should work on your things. But if you don't know what you want to work on, somebody will hire you to build their thing. Okay, so you're going to have to think. And so it's like, how do I work on my things? Well, this is part of it. You got to set these goals. You have to set these intentions. Okay. And so the practical part for today is just the idea. It's like, hey, we're kind of into this new year. What are the 3 1-year goals, which if met would make this coming year a success? Now, I know you guys have 87 things you got to get done. I get that. But what are 3 things? The top 3 things. You should know the top 3 things that you got to do. And if those 3 things get done, then the whole year is a success. Then what happens, you go through the whole year and you sort of always know your focus. Okay. And so this is something that this is on page 1. It takes about half an hour, so we can't fully do it, but I will show you how to do it. All right. And so after this, hopefully by the end of January, which is only a couple days left, get this thing done so that you know the top 3 priorities for 2021. That is your priorities, not somebody else telling you that you got to do something. Okay. So then what you want to do is go take a look at page 2. It's like, where do these 3 things come from? So, well, there's these 8 domains in your life. There's career, family, financial, health, learning, leisure, religious, spiritual, and social. So different people have different priorities. And so one potentially easy way to do it is to pick 3 of these 8. So pick the 3 that you're like, career, family, leisure, whatever, however, pick 3. And then so those are your top 3 out of the 8. And then for each of these 3, set one big priority, one big thing that will say, okay, this is a kind of a 2021 goal relative to this domain. Okay. And so that's a kind of the place to start. So think about which 3 of these out of 8 is potentially the most important to you for this year, and then begin to set an intention around those. Okay. So now, since we are in the dreams, puffy clouds thing, we're going to be up in the sky. So let's say, okay, we're in the sky. Let's just take this analogy further. So first of all, we have to build a scaffold up there. So that's where the goals come from. Your goals, your 1-week goals, your 1-year goals, your 10-year goals are kind of the way that you're going to get to your dreams. All right. And then in addition to that, you have, I'd say, since we're in the sky, we have a star, a sun, and the moon. And so the goals have to kind of be these 3 aspects of goals, which makes it normally, this is because people don't think about it in terms of these 3. These are the sort of the top 3 aspects of goals that you have to be cognizant of in order to be able to set really good goals. All right. Okay. So number 1, so part 1 is finding your North Star. So we're you can actually do this in any order, but I just kind of choose to go in this order. And so I want to share a quote with you by Rumi. He's a Sufi poet. And he says, "When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of distress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I want, what I need flows to me and without any pain. And from this, I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me, and is attracting me. There's a great secret in this for anyone who can grasp it." And so I know we're all busy running around, and sometimes we have to sit down quietly. So I would say that in order to be able to set really good goals, you have to be able to sit down by yourself and not think as much about all the things that you have to do, that your work is demanding from you, but you have to sit down by yourself, and you have to think about almost like quiet yourself so you can listen to what you really want. All right. And so in this case, if you look at the sky, in time-lapse photography, the thing spins around, the stars kind of spin around, except for, of course, the North Star. The North Star stays where it is because of the fact that it's aligned with the rotational axis of the Earth. And so that's sort of the idea, is that if you sit there quietly, you can eventually kind of make out sort of the thing that doesn't move. All right. And so that's the thing that was always there, that was calling to you. Quote by Albert Camus: "A person's work is nothing but the slow trek to rediscover through the detours of art those 2 or 3 great and simple images in whose presence his or her heart first opened." And I'll give you a story. So Michigan still would send me medical students because I help people with interviews. So they would send me medical students that like struggle with interviewing. And so some years ago, there was a student who was looking to match with anesthesia, and kind of had a hard time kind of coming up with good interview answers, right? Because they say, "Oh, why do you want to go to anesthesia?" And everybody, in general, you guys have been in part of interviews, and people struggle to come up with a really cool, authentic answer. So I asked him, "Hey, before med school, what is this thing that you really enjoy doing?" And he said, I was a tour guide in Costa Rica, and I really enjoyed taking people into the rainforest and kind of being there for them, showing them sort of this new adventure into a place that they haven't been to before. And so that's the thing I really, really enjoyed. And so I said, okay, well, how is anesthesia like that? And he goes, it is quite like that, because of the fact that it's not, I'm sitting there, there's a patient, in a way they're going to a dark place that it's kind of scary potentially for them. And I am sort of there as their guide through this journey. So I said, yes, exactly. So then I asked him like other questions about like why he wanted to be in medicine and things like that. And from then on, once he was able to connect with his story, all his answers are really good, right? And so this is what I mean by you have to look for goals that are authentic, because otherwise, by default, our things that we think about, our goals are not really authentic. I say if I write without connecting yourself, I say, what are your goals? You're going to come up with stuff that's like pretty generic, I have to tell you. And so the first exercise I'm going to have you guys do is to think about 3 activities that you really love doing. Okay, 3 things that you really love doing, and 3 words to describe your best self. All right. And so I'm going to talk for another minute, and then I'm going to give you 3 minutes to kind of think about these 6 things. And this is also on your, it's on, let's see, page 3. So if you can get a head start on it if you will like, but let me give you like a quick synopsis on some worldly wisdom. And so what this is says, I'm summarizing a lot of stuff about egos and stuff. And so what they say is, when you were born, we are all in a way have a certain goodness within us. We had this feeling of like being connected, being kind of like meek, allowing, looking after meaning, and it's in a way that there's a certain part. It's like you can see it if somebody, for example, really needed your help for something. You walk out the door, somebody needed your help, you would go help that person. That urge comes from this place, this place here. But then as we grow up, we do actually have to be separate in order to survive. And so as we are kind of getting around in this world, we end up developing this ego. I'm not saying the ego is like bad or anything like that, but there is a certain aspect of it which says, there's a feeling that we are separate, that we have to take things in order to survive. We have to be aggressive. We seek comfort and we seek aggrandizement. And then what happens is, if you think about some of the goals that people set, I say this in order to talk about this, which is some people say, you know what, my goal is I'm going to be the best, I want to do the best thing. And that comes from here. All right. A lot of times when people don't really know what they want, they say they want to be the best. Okay. And it's not like, but the real goals that you really want to set are things that are more about contribution, about something that is more authentic to yourself. And so some of the key things that we have to do as we kind of go through life is to, in a way, go back, leave this behind, to kind of go back to our true selves. And they say the false self because a lot of things that we invest into this, like, oh, we're going to buy a bigger house, we're going to become the best, and we can only be the best for a little bit because somebody else is going to be the best. All these things we eventually have to leave behind, right? And so that's why they call it the false self, right? Okay. So anyway, that's a little bit of philosophy for you. Okay. Can I give you maybe now 2 minutes just to think through these 6 things? All right. So I'm going to shut up for 2 minutes, and I'm going to have you guys just kind of think about these 6 things. Go ahead. Later on, this is one of the things maybe you can think about a little bit deeper on your own. But as you think about goals, you really want to orient towards these things that is calling to you anyway. All right. Like your best self, what you want to do is go towards that. All right. What is it that you can do to kind of get closer to that best self, to do the things that you really love and really love doing? So these 6 things, just kind of keep those in the back of your mind as you're setting goals. 1B, you can do on your own time. So if you have a word about your best self, you will write it here. You will write a little bit of summary of what you mean, and just write down out of 10, how close are you living towards it right now? And then how can you become a 10? How can you become a 10 out of 10? So that's just kind of gets a little bit more thinking towards that direction. How do you begin to live much more authentically, right? And so that's a sort of exercise you can do on your own. Going back to this the 3 1-year goals. I'll just give you an example. It says, oh, okay, let's say if my domain was a career, I'm in education. So this is just a hypothetical education example. Let's say in medical education, there's some problems and tensions among the residents, and learning culture isn't the way I like to see it. So my goal is to positively impact the learning culture of the residency program. That would be one of my, let's say, a goal. And then in here, what you would write down is like, what values does it align with? Things that you really, something that you really love doing, and something that there's an aspect of yourself. All right, so you put that, so we're now talking, we have sort of made that link. So then now we're going to start talking about the next two, which is about visions and emotions. So part 2 is this idea of the thing that you have to do is visual and specific. All right? And in the worksheet, I included a blog post from my mentor, and he's Bob Quinn. He's emeritus faculty, is at the business school here over at Ross. And in the article, he sort of presents this sort of conjecture of like, is the present being driven by the past, or is the present being pulled by the future? Okay, so these are also things that we sort of these dichotomies, and you'll see that you're either driven by the past or you're pulled by the future. All right, and so I'll just read this real quick to you. So based on much research, social scientists assume that people are path dependent. Here's an explanation. Path dependence is the idea that decisions we are faced with depend on past knowledge trajectory and decisions made, and are thus limited by the current competence base. In other words, history matters for the current decision-making situation that has a strong influence on strategic planning. According to this assumption, people tend to be reactive, and the present tends to be determined by the past. Okay, and so what happens, this is the generally what happens, is that whatever you did before is what you will do today. Okay, and so I'm just going to show this using a real quick like smoking examples. Like if you smoked in the past, you will probably smoke today. And so this is like a lot of times, for most of that, it's driven, what we do today is driven by what we did before. All right, but then it says, he goes on to say, but when does the future determine the present? And the answer is when we have a purpose to which we are truly committed. When we imagine and commit to a desired future, the desired future begins to determine what we do in the present. When we wed a future, we break with convention, we begin to engage in unconventional actions, and a new future begins to emerge. So this idea is like, okay, what are you to do if you were to stop smoking? So let's say this will be a break with the past. So let's say you have, you know what, I have a vision of being healthy and enjoying life with my family. So that would be a vision of the future. And so as you have the vision of the future, that allows you to have a different behavior in the present. All right. And so in order for you to behave differently than you did in the past, what you need is actually a vision of the future. All right. And so now I'm going to give you now I'm going to go back to put on a management lens a little bit, since we're kind of in the academy here and talking about data and all that. So now here's the deal. If you look at analyses and data and things like that, what a lot of times these things are meant to do, when you look at data, analyze things, most of the goal is to remove variation. Actually, is to remove variation, so you get to kind of a tighter control over things. All right, that is a lot of the goals of analysis and problem solving. But the problem is you can't actually, people a lot of times say, you know, we need to analyze this in order to transform. But actually the funny thing is, like, the data is from the past. So you can't actually transform into a new future by analyzing past data. All right. You can make it a tighter tolerance, make it more in control. But what happens is, in order for you to kind of say, hey, I'm going to do something completely different, you actually have to the transformation is actually on this part of the curve, right? And it's not really supported by data. All right. So this is one of the key things as you're trying to transform something. It's going to be based on vision and not based on past data. Okay. Not that past data has no role in things. Obviously, there is something you do want to, for example, with patient care, you do want to kind of reduce variation. But if you want a completely different thing, this requires a vision, right? And so this is why it says, draw this line, because this is dark here. This is like scary. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You could fail. Like, and so this is why, in order for you to be able to go down this path, you actually need this vision. You may not even know how you're going to do everything, but you need a vision. And so, give you an example here. So before I left Michigan, I was working on this this medical education transformation program here, and it was a completely new curriculum. You know, we did a lot of pretty like different things, you know, and in Michigan, there's in order for curriculums to change, and there needs to be a vote of all the faculty. And so this was in February of 2015. The vote was going to be in June of 2015. So my boss comes in and says, I just got out of a meeting with Jim Wolfscroft, who was the dean at the time. And he says, oh, we're totally going down on this. There's no way that this curriculum is going to pass the faculty vote. Right. And because even the last one we did, it was 10 years ago, it only passed by a 60-40 margin. And this one is a much more different. And, faculty love change, right? No, they don't, obviously. And that's so it's like, this thing is never going to pass. And, Jim was like, we better all be looking for different jobs, because after this thing burns to the ground, we're going what are we going to do now? So I said, okay, all right, here's what we're going to do. I was like, don't freak out. Here's what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to take all the stuff that people have done, all the committees, and I'm going to turn them into posters. So I created like 60 posters. So we're going to just take the space. I'm going to put posters around the entire space. And then we're going to get the faculty in front of the posters to explain things. All right. And so that we can show people exactly what's going to happen on Monday morning and, for second year or whatever. So it's visual so people can see it. All right. And so then after that, it was got everybody come in. It's like, here's what it looks like. Here's what things look like. Because before this, you can only describe it in words, and people are still kind of scared by that, but you need to put it in a visual form. And so we did that. And then, what happened was that the curriculum actually passed by an 80-20 margin. Okay. And so it was a big thing. And so the key lesson here is that anything physical at one point was a mental and conceptual. Before anything that's created by people physically was once a vision, was once a mental thing. And so if you want to create something, you have to be able to see it first yourself. And if you're trying to create something with other people, you have to help other people see it. Okay. And so this idea is whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And so on page 7 of the worksheet, this is something you might want to do yourself later on. I have actually this vision board. I actually have it right next to me. I just look at it, right? And it's this is so because it's that way I can sort of see where I'm going. This is where I'm going, right? And so I just point out there's a picture here. It's I would like to have this type of office at one point. This is where I would like to work. And so it is. But then of course I put this picture in there many years ago, back when I was in Michigan. So when I moved to Utah, I was well, I guess this is not going to happen because there's not so many lakes over here, and it's more mountains. But it's funny, but recently we bought this cabin where I am right now in Idaho. And it looks like this. And I took a picture out of it, and it looks like this. And so this is me on my laptop kind of working. I'm working at home now, and I'm looking out my window. I was oh yeah, that's what it looks like. Now it's all snowy because it's January right now, but in the summer it's very green. So what happens is if you may also want to kind of lead yourself through pictures, right? That's something that you may want to consider doing. Okay. So the idea is, what is your greatest purpose? So a lot of people are oh, I'm not a visionary. It's don't worry about it. Here's the thing you have to remember is what is your greatest purpose? Why are you working the way why are you doing what you're doing? You have to be in touch with that. That will lead to the vision. Okay. Of course, a vision, put Martin Luther King, that's a vision statement. And it is a scene, a picture in the future, and it's aspirational. So you have to have that. And so then again, back to this thing, it's like, you have to go around, like if you want to help change, you have to tell a story of a future that is better. Okay. It's not just a bunch of data. Sorry, like, you know, it's a story, it's a vision. Okay, visions creates different futures, transformative futures. So you got to learn to do that, not only with other people, but with yourself through your goal setting. So in this case, for example, what does it look like here? Maybe a scene of faculty trainings and talking and laughing with one another. That would be something, okay? And so I would like us to do a breakout room. So could we set it for 10 minutes, maybe groups of 3, where you guys just kind of discuss why, like, what is your greatest purpose? And why are you here doing what you're doing? And what does transformation look like? All right, don't worry. This is just a processing with other people. You do not have to have the answer. You just talk it over with people, and it's helpful to just kind of talk it over. So would it be possible to create the breakout rooms, groups of 3, 10 minutes? Kind of just wrap up this part, which is you do need a vision. You need a vision. It needs to be visual. It's supported by a stories. That would be kind of cool. It's like a picture with a story behind it. That would be very good. All right. It's good for other people. It's good to motivate other people, also for yourself. And so this quote, a vision is not just a picture of what could be, but it's an appeal to our better selves, a call to become something more. So again, some of these visions are not just fantasies. They're actually just a better what is the better version, more purposeful version of you? Or what is the better version, more purposeful version of this organization or of the world? All right. So that is the role of the vision. Okay. And so I did name the SMART goals. Originally, I started down the SMART, but I found out SMART goals are like, okay, everybody sort of knows what they are. And I put it into page 8 of the worksheet just so that you have the format, something you can see and touch, numbers, attainable, but 50% of it should be unknown. I think SMART goals are really good for longer term goal setting, maybe like a 5 to 10 years as well. So something that people care about and by a certain time. All right. So I just put it in there. I found that, you know, you can still end up setting bad goals in the SMART format. So that's why it's like, I just expanded the scope, but I just included here just so that later on, if you're trying to set goals using this format, it's still available for you. And so just to let you know, here's mine. I created this 8 years ago. So it says, by 2022, I'm committed to developing a new model of leadership education and to found a school where to use that model to influence 10,000 young professionals find meaning in their work. So now, if it's okay, I'm just going to include everybody here as young professionals, so I can just put you in my numbers. I'm actually making my numbers, even John Ianni, and he's going to be a young professional for today. So, so I'll be able to make my numbers. Okay, so this is something that you can do also as well. I would use it for setting longer term goals. All right. So now the last part, engaging the power of emotion. So you want to make your goal emotional and evocative. Now, just like a mental like exercise. So this idea is like, okay, we're in Michigan right now. What if there was a job opening that is in Minnesota that is roughly similar to what you're doing today? The pay is roughly the same. People are roughly the same. Job duties roughly the same. If you were to move, you won't take a financial loss. They would pay for that movement transactional cost, but would you go, right? And in general, be like, nah, what's the point, right? And so this is one of the key insights, which is that in general, we have inertia. We have inertia, and we will generally not take action. If it's a little bit good, a little bit bad, doesn't matter. We just we just keep doing what we're doing. So there's some type of inertia that we experience in terms of our ability to kind of take action. But this says, well, what if this move came with a huge promotion and a $150,000 raise? Then it'd be like, maybe so, you know? And so the idea is like, is money itself objectively, you know, sort of good or bad? But I would just say it actually represents energy. All right. What it does is it moves you. Okay, it moves you. It gives you the emotional energy to move. And so you'll see that there's an activation energy. Once you get up to a really positive emotion, you will take action. Okay. Similarly, if they say, you know what, we're going to cut your pay by $20,000 at Michigan, that also is also an emotional trigger. All right. So you will also like take action if you are like deeply wronged. All right. And so those two instances are emotional triggers, which will cause action. All right. And so as we think about we're going to take action towards our goals, we have to generate emotion. And one of the reasons sometimes people is like, I just don't feel like I want to do it. It's because you don't have the emotional activation triggered. And so here's an example. It's like if you're moving a sailboat, you need wind. Like you need the rudder to give you direction, but you need wind. All right. And so you need both of them to go in the right direction. So it's kind of, you need the energy, which is the emotion, and then you need the direction, which is kind of like the vision. Okay. So in our system, we talked about sort of, there's the inspiration, there's a vision, and then there's the energy. There's the energy to activate. You have to get these three systems aligned. And then once you get these alignment of these systems, then you'll start taking action. And so, you know, I talked to a lot of people about what do they really, really want? And of course, this is like a very confusing question to most people, I'll be honest. Because if I were to ask you, what do you really, really want? You'd be like, I really don't know. It's because your mind is trying to answer the question. And your mind is saying, you know, what you really want is like, you want a promotion and you want like a little bit of pay raise so that you can pay your mortgages better. And then, you know, it'd be cool if you buy a bigger house. And then that would be really what you want to go on this vacation. And that's not really what you really want, right? But that your mind will tell you because it's trying to keep you alive. And so therefore, if you ask it and your mind answers, it's not the right answer. Okay. So you actually have to use emotions. Okay. Your feelings knows what you really want. So now I'm going to give you just I'm going to use the Maslow's hierarchy as a basis. I'm not making any outlandish claims about Maslow's hierarchy being a predictor of all human behavior, but this is something we're used to. Here's the 5 layers, and then I had self-transcendence, which is something he did himself later on for his model. I said, let's think about the language that we use as we like do things. And says, well, I need to fix the broken furnace. I have to renew my car registration. Hey, come on now. I should call my mom, right? These 3 things are what's called the imperative mood. And what happens is, the effect is because what happens is you will notice that outer forces are acting upon you. You don't really want to do these things, but you feel you have to because there's some external force causing you to try to do those things. These are not things that you want to do out of your own volition, but these are things that sort of outer forces are acting. So therefore, you are the effect. Okay, you are the effect. You are being affected by outer forces. Now, think about these questions. This language, which is I choose to, I love to, I am called to. All right. This is called the indicative mood. And so this is where you take out of your own volition, take action, and then you begin to become the cause of things. All right. And so it's very difficult for you to lead if you're always like, I have to do this. I have to do this. You will see that a lot of what you're doing right now is other outer forces pushing you to do stuff. And what you got to do is you got to flip it around so that you are initiating the things from the place that you really want to be. All right. And so this is just monitor your own language. Okay. And just check anytime you're like doing a task, figure out where this is coming from. Right. And so now I'll just give you an example, like rather than that activates our heart a little bit. So let's say go to a bookstore. Fortunately, I can still use this example. I think 10 years from now, people will be like, well, it's a bookstore. I don't know what a bookstore is. But now we still remember going to a bookstore. Now, if you were to go to a bookstore, like what section are you going to? You don't need to like, your mind's not like, how do I maximize the productivity of this bookstore visit? You're like, naturally, your heart is pulling you to a place. You naturally want to go to a place. Okay. So where are you going to? what kind of book are you reading? All right. And you will realize for the books that you really, really love, it is giving you a feeling that you want. Okay. It's a giving, and so like my wife, she loves fiction because she wants a certain type of feeling from that fiction, from the story. I like history stuff because I like leadership. I like reading about leadership because it gives me that feeling that I identify with. And so later on, as you think about what are you reading, that's an indication of like where your heart is. Okay. So look at almost like the top 10 books for yourself. That'll give you an interesting indication. Right. And so here's the insight here is that the essence of your desire is a feeling. Knowing how you actually want to feel is the most potent form of clarity that you can have. And so now I'm going to give you 7 feelings. They're pretty it's a pretty large list that kind of encompasses many things. It's not entirely comprehensive of everything, but includes a lot. Okay. And so I'll read them to you. Think about it, try it on. So what feeling do you really, really want? Okay. I want a feeling of being accepted and understood. I want a feeling of specialness and importance. I want a feeling of safety and comfort. I want a feeling of variety and adventure. I want a feeling of personal development. I want a feeling that I'm part of something greater. I want a feeling of freedom and control. Now, even if you ask your mind, like, what do I really want? It's still going to get a little bit confused, but the easiest part where you can actually figure out what you actually wanted is look at the decisions you have made in your life. And your decisions will essentially tell you what's more important, what's less important. Now, you're going to say, yeah, I actually want all 7 of these things. And it's true, you do want all 7, but you want certain things more than other things. Like, for example, I like novelty more than I like stability. So that's why I'm in Idaho right now, because it's kind of interesting. I don't like staying in a place for too long. And so you will see that the choices that you make in your life will reflect the feeling that you really want. Okay. And so in order to be authentic, you have to kind of figure out what is that feeling. Okay. And so then let's see, time-wise. Okay. I'm going to give one last reflection on this one. All right. Just can I give you like a minute and a half just to feel into some of these feelings and kind of look at your life and kind of think about which one potentially is the number one for you. All right. 90 seconds. And we'll go ahead.
Reach out to us if any of you have any thoughts about future efforts that we can, help bring you to make life easier for you as an early career faculty. And we will go to the next slide. Don't forget the member forum, which used to be on the afternoon of today, will be March 2nd. So mark that on your calendar. John Ayanian and the IHPI leadership team will send more information out about that. Next slide. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jody, Stacy, Emily, who put her slides together, and Stephanie. You guys all made the day run smoothly, so thank you. There's going to be an evaluation form coming up in the chat that you can click on a link. We'll also send out via email. We'd love to hear what you thought of this session, particularly with regards to the virtual format, if that's something you guys would like in the future. Additionally, any thoughts or ideas about future sessions that may be helpful for you, we would love to hear more about what you need so that we can fulfill that purpose. I hope everyone has a great day. Sheria, if you have anything else to add, otherwise we will wrap up, and good luck in 2021, everyone.